Um, I have a short amount of time today, and I decided that I thought the thing that might help the most as we start to kind of wrap up 2020 and look towards 2021, and in light of some of the eventual good news that suggests maybe a light at the end of a tunnel at some point, a bit of a philosophy, maybe a framework, if you will, to think about work next year and in the years that follow, to really inform your organization and your teams and helping them to sort of strike the right balance as an organization. And I'm going to start with just a simple analogy that hopefully kind of everybody can connect with, which is, if I were to ask you, what do you eat? Do you eat restaurant or takeout food, or do you cook? Or even simply, what's better? Which one do you prefer? And you'd probably take a second and sort of say, like, well, it kind of depends. I like one. I don't want it all the time. It's really expensive to go out to eat all the time. It's really exhausting to cook all the time. And that's actually a really, really important way to think about work in the future. That's the connection I want to make, which is to bring that same sort of, oh, isn't it obvious that like we just sort of balance how much we go out to eat, how much takeout we eat versus how much we cook at home. But at the same time, your balance for those things is not the same as my balance for those things. We each kind of navigate that. And in the food analogy, there's extra layers to it too, right? There's the what are you eating? Where are you choosing to eat? All of those choices are connected to that fundamental experience and the unique form that takes for you as an individual. And the same can be true, and perhaps should be true, about work. So I'm going to take us back a moment to think about what it was like working, particularly in an office in 2019. So full office, that was the sort of dominant norm for a lot of industries. And that came with a lot of significant benefits. Office spaces are unparalleled in providing for in-person interaction, for collaboration, for group creativity. That's why you have an office. I mean, that's what it does, is it provides you the ability to maintain and build those sorts of things on a recurrent and regular basis. And offices do those things exceptionally well. But at the same time, they have come with sort of trade-offs. In Perimeter, we see that an average commuter spends something like 8 hours a week in commuting to and from an office, which is an extra day effectively to the work week for the opportunity to work in that office environment. At the same time, if anybody has had some of the experiences that I have had, office environments, particularly the popular office, open office, which again supports really well collaboration and creativity, it doesn't really support independent work completion and focus. So now you take a step forward into 2020 and our sort of fully remote grand experiment. And we've seen, and not just us, but the research we've done surveying over 3,000 people, but also a compendium, we cataloged over 40 different studies that represented 175,000 people surveyed, and the findings are all pretty consistent. The quality, the sort of work-life balance things have been pretty universally improved. People have more time, they're sleeping more, they're working more, and they're spending more time with their family. That's a significant benefit. And they're also reporting that they're completing independent work at higher volumes and perceived higher levels of quality. We hear this from managers and executives as well. So productivity actually pretty well supported, and some more detailed studies support that as well, like actually looking at quantified productivity. But there are big trade-offs, right? The isolation that many people have with a fully remote experience, and the challenges that may come with other home distractions, or challenges in having a truly effective home work environment, and the simple loss of resources. You can't replicate the amenities, in-person interaction, and quality that you have in a fixed office. So if you look to 2021 and you ask yourselves questions like, okay, well, what am I choosing? Is this sort of like pick your poison 2019 or 2020 repeat? But there's probably a pretty simple idea here that you're all thinking already, which is, okay, so remote work isn't perfect, office work isn't perfect. There are options in between those things. And this is not a prescription. I'm not going to now tell you the exact number of days per week your organization should be remote, or even that you should be remote. rather, I want to encourage a set of questions that hopefully will allow your organization to better navigate the organizational and management choices that you face as you look to the next few months, the next 3, 6, 9 months of somewhat of a preparation or transition back into an office. Many of your organizations may already be in an office in some capacity, but you're going to look at potentially increasing that over time. That comes with a lot of organizational choices. And then whatever the potential role for remote work may have for you. And this is what we're sort of talking about this and thinking about this in a simple way, which is to call it balanced work. This is informed by the simple idea that work isn't a place. Work is a verb. It's a thing that you do. And so what you want to be ideally set up for is having a balance and rebalancing how you work, where you work, when you work, and even getting to work. And this is the most important question I hope you all are already asking as an organization and of your teams and your people, but assuredly should be your anchor question, which is what works best for you, for your organizations, for your teams. And that, I think, is well captured in the intersection of two driving forces, which are business need and employee choice. And those things are not necessarily at odds, but there is an intersection between those things. And the intersection is going to be potentially unique, certainly unique to your organization, but very likely unique to roles and possibly even to certain individual employees. And you can get a little bit more granular on the questions. These are just examples. These are not necessarily exhaustive. There are so many types of roles, and they'll have different questions. But for example, how much collaboration time does a particular role need versus independent work time? So if I want them to spend 40% on collaboration and group, but then I really want them to have 60% on getting their solo work done, that's pretty useful for me to sort of use as I think about some of these, more operational details. What time with customers do they need? And what if that is improved by in-person, and that should be the focus, and what might actually benefit from remote? We've heard, for example, from some organizations, they're actually increasing their frequency of engaging with customers by leveraging technology and being remote. And then, so those are the business need side. What about the employee choice side? What do your employees actually want? Where or when can their work be done best? And how do you know that? Have you asked them? If you haven't, consider doing some surveying or a focus group, some other sort of systematic collection of information to help inform those decisions and understand what your employee preferences really are. And those employee preferences will vary. We, again, have done a lot of surveying, and while we do see a lot of interest in part-time remote work, we also see that there are a sizable number who would prefer a minimal amount of remote work. And understanding who those people are and the unique attributes that will drive some of those differences, such as, for example, age, is important when you think about where the intersection of your employee choice and business need is. This is just a really, really, really basic typology. If you have those two dimensions and you just wanted to sort of turn them into an ordinal level variable, you have your high, medium, and low desire to work remotely, and you have a sort of high, medium, and low proportion of their work responsibilities or tasks that are completed independently. You can align and sort of, estimate and have a general framework for how frequently you might want them to work remotely. Again, this is just one of the questions in terms of where they would work. But you can see that that provides you with a sizable spectrum to work with. Where is, I think, a major starting point for us. It's a very important question. It's a very popular question right now. But there are a lot of other elements to this balancing of work that we want to encourage you all to take away today. When should you work? And that can be as simple as when are employees actually working in the day, but also is your on-site presence well balanced? So if, for example, you want people to be coming back into an office at 25% or 50% capacity at some point next year, how are you actually balancing that in terms of when they're arriving, how they're going through shared spaces, whether you're ensuring that they're not sort of all expected to be there at the exact same time? You can leverage when to great effect. You can also leverage when to better suit customers in other territories or employees that are on other time zones. So also, who should work when? That's an important piece to ensure that you're aligning who is remote or on site or working at different times and making sure that those things match appropriately. Because without active management of those things, you will notice a lower performance in some of the things that you might want to have come out of that in-person interaction. And then how will you get to work? Have you considered how people are going to be getting back into an office, particularly if you're in that transitional period of next year? This is a really important question, and it will remain an important question, because if we see, for example, people avoiding transit out of a perception of it being less safe, that's going to affect the experience that everyone has getting in and out of the market, particularly if they're all expecting to sort of go back to a normal 8 or 9 to sort of 5 p.m. Clock. So lastly, this is also a really big question, one that I think that the extent to which you're asking this question already probably says a lot about how your organization is performing, which is, what could be better? What can we be doing to facilitate improvement, regardless of whether that's in an office or remote? Really want to encourage organizations not to fall back to like, well, we'll get back to an office and then we'll get back to being creative. Then we'll get back to collaborating. There's so much you can be doing already now to be boosting your organizations. And the same is true when you're in an office, right? I mean, you want to be making those investments in your organization to be continually improving and making the most out of these strategic choices, because they really are strategic choices. So the core thing that I want to set up today, you are not alone. We have a little bit of reading. So to a new site that we've launched that has a host of ebooks, and we're adding more all the time. So our first 4 are up, and they introduce some of the pieces of where you work, how you work, when you work, and how you get to work. There will be a bunch more coming up. All of this is just to try to help the market. We have a litany of resources. These are some of my favorites. Obviously, a lot of stuff around remote work policies and guidance and care packs, but also a meta-analysis that look at 40 different studies. What have we learned in 2020 about work? Survey and focus group support. Those are things that we can provide. Remote culture building, safe commute considerations. There's more stuff. But again, there's some reading, some resources, but most of all, a guide. So please check out the site, perimeter.rebalancing.work. Check out some of those resources. Shoot me an email or contact us via that site. We are a no-cost service for employers within the Perimeter District. That's, again, made possible by the Perimeter Community Improvement District. So please reach out to us for your organization if you want to dive further into these questions. I think we have a couple minutes maybe for some questions, and any that we don't get to, please do send those to me.
We have about 30 seconds. I don't see anybody in the queue, Johann, so for Q&A. And but that was terrific information. These are certainly uncharted territories. I want to thank everybody that joined in to the discussion, and thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
It was wonderful. And so for our participants, I would like to ask you all to join us over on the stage, where we're going to begin a conversation with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on equality of opportunity. Johann, thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great afternoon.